The night Roman DeLuca told his 7-month pregnant wife, "That baby isn't mine," he thought he was protecting his empire. He had no idea he was burying his family alive. Because sometimes the most dangerous weapon in a Mafia king's world isn't a gun, a rival, or a blood oath. It's the lie he believes before the truth ever gets a chance to speak. In a rain-dark office above the Brooklyn docks, a DNA envelope sat on Roman's desk like a death sentence. Outside, black cars waited in silence. Inside, the most feared man in New York could barely breathe. This story is not just about betrayal. It is about pride, fear fatherhood, and the kind of love that can only be rebuilt one painful choice at a time. Stay until the end, hit like, and comment where you're watching from. The envelope had given Roman the truth, but it had not given him mercy. He left the club without speaking to anyone. Men stepped aside as he crossed the back hallway, their eyes dropping to the floor, the way they always did when Roman DeLuca moved with that kind of silence. Usually that silence meant someone else was about to suffer. Tonight, it belonged to him. Rain washed the alley behind the club in silver streaks. A black Cadillac waited near the curb, engine running headlights cutting through the wet dark. One of his drivers opened the rear door, but Roman walked past him and got behind the wheel himself. The driver hesitated. Boss Roman did not look at him. "Get in the other car." The man obeyed. Roman pulled away from the curb so fast the tires hissed against the slick pavement. Brooklyn blurred around him, all brick walls, iron fire escapes, glowing deli signs, and empty sidewalks shining under rain. The city looked the same as it always had, hard, restless, alive. But inside Roman, something had gone quiet in a way that frightened him. His hand kept moving to the inside pocket of his coat. The report was still there. Probability of paternity, 99.99%. He had read the line once. Then again. Then again, as if the numbers might change if he stared long enough. They did not. Claire had told the truth. His wife had stood in their kitchen, 7 months pregnant, one hand over their son, and Roman had looked at her like she was a stranger. Worse than a stranger. A traitor. He hit the accelerator. The city opened into highway. Rain hammered the windshield. Wipers cut back and forth with a steady rhythm, but they could not clear the memories. Claire's face that night. Not angry at first, not even afraid. Confused. That was the part that now clawed at him. She had looked confused because she had no idea what he was accusing her of. He had mistaken innocence for performance. He had seen pain and called it guilt. His phone sat on the passenger seat. He pressed Claire's name. The call rang once, then went straight to voicemail. Her old greeting filled the car. "Hi, this is Claire. Leave a message and I'll call you back when I can." Her voice was soft, warm, a little rushed, as if she had recorded it while smiling at something just outside the frame. Roman ended the call. He called again. Voicemail. Again. Voicemail. By the fourth call, his thumb hovered over the screen, shaking with something he refused to name. He could order men to cross state lines before sunrise. He could shut down a port with one phone call. He could make hardened criminals lower their voices in his presence, but he could not make his wife answer. The highway stretched ahead, slick and black. Red taillights floated in the distance like dying embers. Roman drove through the night with the city behind him and the Atlantic somewhere ahead, every mile taking him closer to a woman who had learned to survive without him. At some point after midnight, the rain softened. The road signs changed. New York gave way to New Jersey concrete, and noise giving way to low marshland, dark pine trees, sleeping towns, and gas stations glowing alone beside the road. Roman's thoughts moved in circles. He remembered the first time Claire had told him she loved the ocean. They had been walking along the Brooklyn Heights promenade after dinner. She had leaned against the railing, wind lifting her hair, and said the sea made her feel small in the best way. Roman had laughed then. "You like feeling small?" Claire had looked at him with that patient smile she used when she thought he was missing the point. "Sometimes." It reminds me I don't have to control everything." He had kissed her instead of answering. Back then, he had thought love meant keeping her close, surrounded by guards, money walls, rules. He had thought safety was something a man built around a woman. Now he wondered if he had built a cage and called it devotion. His phone rang. Roman snatched it up. It was Marcus. "Tell me." Marcus's voice came through low and steady. "I spoke to the nurse again. Claire is stable. The baby was born less than an hour ago." Roman's grip tightened on the steering wheel. "A boy." "Yes." Roman's breath left him in one hard exhale. For a few seconds, he could not see the road clearly. A son. His son. Noah, though he did not know the name yet. A child born while his father was racing through rain with proof in his pocket and shame in his throat. Marcus continued. "They said there were no complications." Roman nodded, though Marcus could not see him. Was she alone? A pause. Roman heard the answer in the silence before Marcus spoke. "Yes." The word struck harder than any bullet Roman had ever taken. Claire had gone into labor alone. She had signed forms alone. She had heard the first cry alone. She had reached for no hand because the hand that should have been there had pushed her away. Roman's voice came out rough. "Did she ask for me?" Marcus did not answer right away. Roman closed his eyes for half a second, then opened them to the road. "Say it." "No." Roman's jaw tightened until it hurt. "Thank you." "Roman." What Marcus sounded older than he had that morning. "When you get there, remember who you're walking in as." Roman frowned. "I'm her husband." "No," Marcus said softly. "You are the man who broke her heart." Roman said nothing. The line remained open between them, filled with engine noise and rainwater beneath the tires. Marcus added, "Do not make her carry your guilt tonight. She has carried enough." Roman ended the call without answering, but the words stayed. "Do not make her carry your guilt." He repeated them silently as the highway narrowed and the air began to smell faintly of salt. Cape May appeared slowly, not like Brooklyn, not with sirens and steel and restless light, but with sleeping streets, old Victorian houses, white fences, dark porches, and street lamps glowing through mist. The town looked like something from a postcard someone had left out in the rain. Roman hated how peaceful it was. He hated that Claire had found this place without him. He hated that a part of him was relieved she had. St. Agnes Medical Center sat on a rise near the water, small and pale against the night. The Atlantic rolled somewhere beyond it, invisible, but present, breathing in the dark. Roman parked badly near the emergency entrance and stepped out before the engine fully died. His coat whipped around him in the wind. The automatic doors slid open with a soft sigh. Inside, the hospital smelled like antiseptic coffee and quiet fear. At the front desk, a nurse looked up from her computer. "Can I help you?" Roman opened his mouth, but for one strange second, no sound came. The woman behind the desk was not afraid of him. She had no idea who he was. No one here moved aside for the DeLuca name. No one lowered their voice. No one cared how many men answered his calls. Here he was, just a man with wet hair and hollow eyes, asking for a woman he had hurt. "Claire DeLuca," he said. The nurse typed something. "Family." The question landed in the center of his chest. Family. He had used that word his whole life, like a crown, like a code, like a law men killed and died under. But he had never understood how fragile it could become. He looked down at his left hand. His wedding ring was still there. Claire's was not. "I'm her husband." The nurse studied him. It was not suspicion exactly. It was the careful look of a woman who had seen enough hospital rooms to know when a story had bruises. "She's in maternity. Second floor. Room 214. Roman nodded. "Thank you." He walked toward the elevators. His shoes made dull sounds against the polished floor. A vending machine hummed near the wall. Somewhere down the hall, a baby cried briefly, then settled. The elevator doors opened. Roman stepped inside and pressed the button. Second floor. The ride lasted less than 30 seconds. It felt longer than prison. He stared at his reflection in the metal doors. Roman DeLuca looked back at him, black coat, sharp jaw, eyes darker than the night outside. The face that had made men confess before a word was spoken. He looked like power. He felt like ruin. The doors opened. Warm light spilled into the elevator. The maternity ward was quiet. Nurses moved in soft shoes. A television murmured behind one closed door. Flowers sat on a table near the hallway, pink and white and yellow, their cheerfulness almost cruel. Roman followed the room numbers. 208, 209, 210, then 214. The door was partly open. He stopped before he reached it. For the first time since he was a boy, Roman DeLuca was afraid to enter a room. Through the narrow opening, he saw a lamp glowing beside the bed. A curtain moved slightly in the draft from the vent. A plastic water cup sat on the tray table. A blue blanket lay folded over the foot of the bed. Then he saw Claire. She was sitting against white pillows, her hair loose around her shoulders, her face pale with exhaustion. There were shadows beneath her eyes. Her lips were dry. One hand rested gently over the bundle in her arms. The baby was so small, Roman's mind refused to understand it at first. A tiny face, a soft cap, one curled fist pressed near his cheek. Roman stepped closer, one hand bracing against the doorframe. His son yawned. That was all. A small, sleepy movement. But something inside Roman gave way. He had seen men beg for mercy. He had watched blood spread across concrete. He had stood at graves and felt nothing because feeling was a luxury his world did not reward. Now he stood in the doorway of a hospital room, undone by the sight of a newborn opening his mouth in sleep. Claire looked down at the baby and smiled. Not a big smile, not bright, just tired and private and full of a tenderness Roman had no right to witness. He almost turned around. He almost left because the room seemed too holy for a man like him. Then Claire sensed him. Her head turned slowly. Their eyes met. 3 months of silence entered the room before either of them spoke. Claire did not gasp. She did not look surprised for long. Her gaze moved over him, taking in the wet coat, the sleepless face, the hand pressed against the doorframe. Then her eyes dropped to his coat pocket. The folded paper showed just enough. Understanding crossed her face. Quiet. Immediate. Complete. So she said, her voice low. "You found out." Roman swallowed. Yes. Claire looked back at the baby. No satisfaction, no triumph, no cruel relief. That hurt most of all. If she had wanted to punish him, he might have known what to do with that. If she had screamed, he could have stood there and taken it. If she had thrown something, he would have deserved it. But Claire simply looked tired. Tired in a way his apology could not touch. Roman stepped inside. "Claire, don't wake him." The words stopped him. Not because they were harsh. They were not. They were quiet, maternal, protective. The child came first now. Not Roman's shame, not his confession, not the storm inside him. He nodded once. "I won't." She adjusted the blanket around the baby's shoulder. Roman stood near the foot of the bed, careful to leave distance between them. The room seemed too small for everything unsaid. "I was wrong," he said. Claire's eyes remained on the baby. "Yes." The single word hit him with more force than a slap. "I should have listened." "Yes." "I should have asked you." "Yes." He deserved each one. Still, each answer cut a little deeper. Roman looked at the floor. I don't expect forgiveness. Claire gave a tired breath that was almost a laugh, but not enough to be one. That's good. He closed his eyes. For a long moment, only the soft hum of the hospital machines filled the room. Then the baby made a small sound, no more than a breath catching in sleep. Claire's expression changed instantly. Her entire face softened as she lowered her head and whispered something against the baby's cap. Roman could not hear the words. He did not need to. They were not for him. His throat tightened. What's his name? Claire did not answer immediately. Roman waited. Once he would have expected an answer because he asked a question. Once he would have taken silence as defiance. Tonight he accepted it as something she had earned the right to give. At last she said Noah. Roman repeated the name in a whisper. Noah. It changed the room. Before the baby had been a truth, a consequence, a son he had not yet met. Now he was Noah, a person, a life, a beginning Roman had almost missed entirely. It's a good name, Roman said. Claire's thumb brushed the baby's blanket. My father used to read me a story about a boy named Noah when I was little. He said Noah was the kind of name you gave a child when you wanted him to survive storms. Roman could not look away from her. Claire had always carried old things with her. A worn library card from her mother, a silver bookmark from her father, recipes written in fading ink, pieces of love that had no price and therefore no place in Roman's old understanding of value. He had given her diamonds. She had kept paper. The contrast made his chest ache. Can I see him? Roman asked. Claire's arms tightened slightly. He caught it. A boundary. He stepped back half an inch. Just from here, he added. Claire looked at him then. Really looked at him. Maybe she expected him to push. Maybe she expected Roman DeLuca king of locked doors and whispered orders to claim his rights as a father-husband-man. He did not. After a long pause, Claire shifted the baby just enough for Roman to see his face. Noah's eyes were closed. His lashes were dark and fine. His mouth was small, soft, perfect. One hand escaped the blanket fingers opening and closing as if reaching for something in a dream. Roman pressed his knuckles against his mouth. He had thought he knew what regret was. He had been wrong about that too. He has your mouth, Claire said quietly. Roman looked up, startled. Her eyes were on Noah, not him. Does he? Yes. There was no warmth in the answer, but there was no cruelty either. That almost made it worse. He was being allowed facts, not intimacy. Roman nodded. He's beautiful. Claire's face changed at that. Not much. Just enough. He is. Roman took another breath. I called you so many times. I know. He looked at her. You saw Claire nodded. I turned the phone off. The words were simple. They should not have hurt as much as they did. Roman deserved them anyway. I understand. Her eyes lifted. Do you? He had no answer. Claire studied him in the dim light. There was a time when her gaze had made him feel chosen. Now it made him feel measured. You came because of the paper, she said. Roman's hand moved to the report in his pocket. He could have lied. He could have said he came because Marcus called, because the hospital reached out, because he still loved her. All of those things were partly true. None of them were the truth she was asking for. Yes, he said. Claire nodded as if she had known. That's what I thought. Claire. No. Her voice was soft, but it closed around the word like a door. Not tonight. Roman went still. I need to say this while I still have the strength. He nodded. She looked down at Noah, then back at Roman. When you accused me, I kept waiting for you to pause. Just once. I kept waiting for you to look at me and remember who I was. Roman's jaw tightened. "But you didn't," she said. "You looked at that photo like it knew me better than you did." He closed his eyes. "I was angry. You were afraid." The correction came so quietly he almost missed it. Claire continued. "And maybe anger would have been easier to forgive." Roman opened his eyes. She was looking at him now, and there were tears in her eyes, though none had fallen. Anger passes. Fear stays. Fear builds rooms inside a person. It locks the doors. It tells you everyone is lying before they even speak. Roman felt the old house in Queens rise in his memory. His mother crying, his father's cold voice, the smell of expensive cologne and betrayal. Claire saw something move across his face. "I know your father hurt your mother," she said. Roman looked away. "I know that shaped you. I tried to understand that for years." Her voice trembled slightly, but she steadied it. "But I was not your father, Roman. I was your wife." There it was. The truth no DNA result could soften. He had taken a wound from his childhood and placed it like a sentence over Claire's life. "I know," he whispered. Claire shook her head. "No. You are starting to know." The baby stirred. Claire lowered her face to him, pressing a kiss against his forehead. Her tears finally fell, but she wiped them away quickly, almost angrily, as if she hated giving Roman the sight of them. He wanted to cross the room. He wanted to take her hand. He wanted to promise that he would spend the rest of his life undoing those 3 months. But Marcus's warning held him in place. "Do not make her carry your guilt." So Roman stayed where he was. "I won't ask you to come back," he said. Claire's expression flickered. "I won't ask you to forgive me tonight. I won't ask you for anything." She watched him carefully. Roman forced the next words past the shame in his throat. "I only wanted to see you were safe. Both of you." Claire was silent for a long time. Then she said, "We are safe." The words struck him strangely. "We, but not including him." Roman nodded. "I'm glad." Noah's mouth moved in sleep. Claire looked down at him again, and the world inside that hospital room narrowed around mother and child. Roman understood the dismissal before she said it. "You should rest," he said. Claire did not argue. He moved toward the door. Every step felt like leaving something behind that might never let him return. At the threshold, her voice stopped him. "Roman." He turned. Claire's face was half in shadow, half in lamplight. "Do not bring your men here." He nodded. "I won't. Do not have anyone watch me. I won't. Do not try to buy this town." A painful, almost smile touched his mouth and vanished. "I won't." Her eyes held his. "And do not decide that because the test says he is yours, you get to walk in and become his father overnight." Roman looked at Noah, then back at Claire. "You're right." She seemed surprised by the answer. Roman's voice dropped. "I gave up that right when I chose not to believe you." Claire blinked once. Her face shifted not toward forgiveness, but toward something less guarded for a single breath. Then it was gone. "Good night, Roman." He accepted the dismissal. "Good night, Claire." He stepped into the hallway and closed the door softly behind him. Only when he was outside did he let his back touch the wall. His knees almost gave. A nurse passed by carrying folded blankets. She glanced at him, then looked away with the kindness of someone who knew a man breaking apart should be allowed some privacy. Roman stood there for a long time. The hallway was quiet, warm, ordinary. Somewhere a newborn cried. Somewhere a woman laughed softly. Somewhere a father whispered nonsense to a child he had waited months to hold. Roman looked down at his hands. Hands that had signed death orders. Hands that had counted money. Hands that had held Claire's waist on their wedding night while she laughed against his shoulder. hands that had not been there when Noah entered the world. The door to room 214 remained closed. Roman did not knock again. He walked to the waiting area at the end of the hall and sat in a plastic chair beneath a flickering television. The sound was muted. An old cooking show played to no one. He stayed there until dawn. No guards, no phone calls, no orders. Just Roman DeLuca sitting under hospital lights learning the weight of being unwelcome in the place he should have belonged. At 7 in the morning, the ward began to wake. Nurses changed shifts. A janitor pushed a mop bucket down the hall. Pale sunlight crept through the windows, turning the floor gold. Roman had not slept. He heard the door open before he saw her. Claire stepped into the hallway wearing a gray cardigan over her hospital gown. Her hair was tied back loosely. She moved slowly, one hand against the wall, her body still carrying the exhaustion of birth. Roman stood immediately. "You should be resting." Claire looked at him with tired eyes. The doctor said, "Walking helps." He nodded. A pause stretched between them. "How is Noah?" he asked. Her face softened at the name. "Hungry. Loud. Perfect." Roman's mouth moved before he could stop it, almost a smile. Claire saw it. For one small second, something familiar passed between them. A ghost of the life before the photo, before the accusation, before the marble counter, and the ring left behind. Then Claire looked away. Roman said, "I can leave if you want." She leaned against the wall and studied him. "You stayed all night?" "Yes." "Why?" The question was not sharp. That made it harder. Roman looked toward her room, because leaving felt like doing it again. Claire absorbed that. Her fingers tightened around the edge of her cardigan. He recognized it then. It was the same gray cardigan she used to wear on rainy Sundays in their brownstone, curled on the sofa with tea and a book while he pretended not to watch her from across the room. Some things had survived him. That thought nearly broke him. Claire followed his gaze to the cardigan. "My suitcase was packed in a hurry," she said. Roman nodded, unable to speak. A nurse approached with a clipboard. "Mrs. DeLuca will check on you and the baby in about 20 minutes." Claire thanked her. The name lingered in the hallway. Mrs. DeLuca. Roman saw Claire hear it too. She did not correct the nurse. She did not look at Roman either. After the nurse left, Claire turned back toward the door. Roman said quietly, "Claire." She stopped. He took the folded DNA report from his coat pocket. For a moment, he simply held it. Then he tore it once. Claire watched. He tore it again, and again. The pieces fell into the trash can beside the waiting room chair. Claire's eyes narrowed slightly. "What are you doing?" Roman looked at the torn paper. "I don't need it anymore." Her voice was quiet. "You needed it yesterday." "Yes." He met her eyes. "And I will be ashamed of that for the rest of my life." Claire looked at him for a long moment. The hallway seemed to hold its breath. Then Noah cried from inside the room. The sound changed her instantly. She turned toward the door, one hand already reaching for the handle. Roman stepped back to give her space. Claire opened the door, then paused. Without looking at him, she said, "You can see him before we leave." Roman's breath caught. She added, "From the chair." He nodded. "Of course. And you do not get to hold him yet." The words hurt. They also gave him something solid to stand on. A boundary was not a wall. It was a door with rules. Roman looked at Claire, then at the room where his son was crying. "Thank you," he said. Claire did not answer. She walked inside, and after a moment Roman followed carefully, slowly, like a man entering a church after years of forgetting how to pray. Inside room 214. Claire was sitting with Noah against her chest. The baby had stopped crying, but his mouth still moved in tiny, restless motions, searching for comfort. Claire adjusted the blanket with one hand, slow and careful, as if the world could fall apart if she moved too quickly. Roman stayed near the chair by the wall. He had been invited only that far, so that was where he remained. Noah opened his eyes for a second. They were dark and unfocused newborn eyes trying to make sense of light. Roman leaned forward without meaning to. Something inside him reached before his body did. Claire noticed. Her arms tightened. Roman sat back at once. The movement was small, but she saw it. Maybe that mattered. Maybe it did not. He had spent years making rooms obey him. Now he was learning to obey the quiet fear in his wife's shoulders. The doctor came in just after 8. She checked Claire, then Noah, then smiled with the kind of warmth that belonged to people who delivered miracles for a living. "Both of you are doing beautifully," she said. Claire smiled politely. Roman looked at the doctor and felt something sharp move beneath his ribs. "Both of you." He should have heard those words from beside Claire's bed, holding her hand, exhausted and terrified and grateful. He should have been there when the first cry filled the room. He should have been the first person Claire looked at when their son arrived. Instead, he was a man sitting in a chair with his coat still damp, trying to earn permission to breathe near his own child. The doctor turned to him. "And you are—" The question hung there. Claire looked down at Noah. Roman answered before she had to. "Roman DeLuca." The doctor waited for more. He gave none. Claire's silence gave less. The doctor understood enough to change the subject. She explained the discharge process, feeding times, warning signs, paperwork, pediatric appointments. Claire listened with tired focus. Roman listened harder than he had listened to any business deal in his life. He took no notes because he had no right to act like he belonged, but he remembered every word. When the doctor left, Claire shifted Noah in her arms and winced. Roman stood halfway. "Do you need help?" Claire's eyes lifted. The answer was already there before she spoke. "No." He sat again. "Okay." The word cost him less than arguing and more than any fight he had ever won. By afternoon, the room filled with the quiet mess of leaving. A nurse brought forms. Claire signed them slowly. A plastic bag held baby supplies. A small blue cap rested on the bed. Roman looked at every object like it was evidence from a life he had missed. Claire changed Noah into a soft white outfit with tiny clouds on it. Her hands moved with the careful uncertainty of a new mother who had learned everything quickly because no one else was there. Roman watched her fasten the tiny snaps. He had once watched men load crates worth millions under false customs papers with less concentration than Claire gave to each button. Noah fussed. Claire murmured, "I know, sweetheart. I know." Roman turned toward the window. Sweetheart. A word that should have belonged inside their home from the beginning. A word that should have floated between them in a nursery he never finished painting beside a crib he never assembled under a mobile Claire had once shown him on her phone. He remembered that night. She had held the screen up while he reviewed shipping reports. "Look at this one," she had said. "Little moons and stars." He had glanced for less than a second. "Buy whatever you like." Claire had gone quiet then. He had not noticed. Now he understood that money had often been his quickest way of leaving the room while still standing in it. At 4 in the afternoon, Claire was cleared to go. Roman carried the bags because she allowed that much. Outside, the air smelled of salt and rain. The hospital parking lot shone under a pale winter sun. Claire walked slowly with Noah held close, the baby tucked against her like a secret she had survived to protect. Roman kept one step behind her. Not beside her. Behind her. That was where the last 3 months had placed him. At Claire's car, he opened the trunk and set the bags inside. "I can drive you," he said. Claire buckled Noah into the car seat. Her hands moved carefully around the straps. No. Roman nodded. I can follow at a distance. She closed the car door and turned to him. No. He accepted the second answer faster than the first. The old Roman might have heard insult. The man standing there heard exhaustion, fear, a boundary drawn by a woman who had learned that love without safety was only another kind of danger. Claire looked at him for a moment as if she expected pressure persuasion, some velvet version of command. He gave her none. Okay, he said. She seemed almost unsettled by his surrender. The wind moved a strand of hair across her cheek. For 1 second his hand remembered tucking her hair behind her ear. He did not move. Claire opened the driver's door. Thank you for carrying the bags. Polite. That word cut deeper than hatred. Roman looked at her. You never have to thank me for doing what I should have been doing all along. Her face changed slightly, but she turned away before he could understand it. Then she got into the car. Roman stood in the parking lot as she drove away with their son. He watched until the taillights disappeared beyond the hospital entrance and turned onto the road that led toward town. Only then did he take out his phone. Marcus answered on the first ring. Is she discharged? Yes. Are you coming back to Brooklyn? Roman looked toward the ocean, gray and restless beyond the hospital grounds. No. A pause. Roman, she is here. She asked you to stay. No. Marcus was silent. Roman understood what that silence meant. It was not judgment. It was concern. Men like Roman did not stay somewhere without being wanted. Men like Roman conquered rooms or left them behind. But Claire was not a room. Noah was not an heirloom. And this town was not enemy territory. Roman said, I am not going near her unless she allows it. Where will you go? There is an inn near the water. You are going to stay at an inn. Marcus sounded like he almost did not believe the words. Roman looked down at his shoes still marked with hospital floor dust. Yes. Do you want men posted nearby? Number Roman Sorrento is still out there. At the name, Roman's jaw tightened. Vincent Sorrento, the rival who had smiled across tables and raised glasses at funerals. The man whose family had been circling the Brooklyn docks for years waiting for a weakness in the DeLuca line. Roman had been so busy guarding his territory that he never noticed the attack had already reached his kitchen. Keep digging, Roman said. I am. If Sorrento sent that photo, I want proof. You will have it. Roman ended the call and drove into Cape May. The town was soft in a way that almost offended him. Painted houses with gingerbread trim, narrow streets lined with bare trees, small shops with striped awnings, a bakery window glowing amber, couples walking under umbrellas, a fisherman smoking outside a diner as if the world had no knives in it. Roman checked into a small inn facing the ocean. The woman at the front desk handed him a brass key with a plastic tag. Room 6. Stairs are to your left. No one took his luggage. No one called him sir in the careful way men did when fear had polished the word. No one asked if he wanted privacy because no one knew his life required it. The room was plain. A narrow bed, faded wallpaper, a small desk near the window, a heater that clicked every few minutes. The ocean visible between two buildings if he stood at the right angle. Roman placed his coat over the chair. Then he sat on the edge of the bed and looked at the wall. The silence here was different from the silence in his Brooklyn office. Their silence had weight. It belonged to locked doors, unspoken threats, men waiting for orders. Here, silence was ordinary. Someone laughed in the room below. A car passed outside. Wind pressed faintly against the glass. Roman took off his wedding ring and held it in his palm. He did not know why. Maybe because Claire's ring had been left on marble 3 months ago. Maybe because his had never felt heavier. Maybe because a ring meant nothing if the hand wearing it had failed the vow. He closed his fist around it until the edge marked his skin. That night he did not sleep. Marcus called just before dawn. Roman was still sitting by the window. "I found the first thread," Marcus said. Roman's eyes sharpened. "Talk." The photograph was taken outside the Marlowe Hotel in Manhattan. "I know where it was taken. The timestamp was altered." Roman stood. "How altered?" "By almost 2 hours. Claire was not there at the time shown in the message." Roman closed his eyes. Marcus continued. "The man in the photo is Daniel Price, family law attorney, clean record, married, 2 children. His firm helped file documents for a non-profit literacy project Claire was setting up." Roman opened his eyes. A memory surfaced. Claire at the dining table with papers spread around her, smiling when he walked in. "I want to do something for kids who do not have books at home," she had said. He had kissed her forehead and told her to have his accountant handle the money. She had said, "I do not want it to just be money, Roman." He had been halfway to another call. "Whatever you need." He had not asked another question. Roman pressed his hand against the window frame. "What else?" The photo was cropped. There were 2 other people standing with them, a hotel employee and a woman from the foundation board. Roman's stomach turned. He had looked at a cropped lie and destroyed a full truth. Marcus said, "The anonymous account used a chain of shell servers. Whoever built it knew how to hide. But one payment trail points to a consulting group in Newark." Roman's voice went cold. "Sorrento. Not directly, not yet. But the consulting group received money from an investment company tied to his nephew." Roman stared at the gray line of morning beyond the glass. "Keep going." "I will." "And Marcus." "Yes, no one touches Sorrento until I say." Another silence. Marcus spoke carefully. "That is not what I expected you to say." Roman watched gulls circle over the waking street. Neither did I. After the call, Roman showered, changed into a dark sweater and coat, and drove nowhere for nearly an hour. He passed Claire's street once without stopping. He saw her cottage from the corner. Small, white. A porch with blue chairs. A wind chime moving near the door. There was a rental car in the driveway and a light on in the front window. He slowed. Then he kept driving. His hands tightened around the wheel. Everything in him wanted to knock. To ask how Noah slept. To ask if Claire had eaten. To ask if she needed firewood, groceries, medicine, anything. But need had become a dangerous word in his mouth. He had used it too often to disguise control. So he drove past. At the edge of town, he parked near the beach and walked down to the water. The Atlantic rolled in cold and endless. Wind cut through his coat. Roman stood there, hands in his pockets, while waves broke against the shore. He thought of his father. Carlo De Luca had taught him that a man survived by doubting everyone. He taught him that affection was leverage, that loyalty had to be tested, that wives looked away if they were smart, and sons grew strong if they learned early not to cry. Roman was 10 when he first understood his mother was unhappy. He had woken to glass breaking downstairs, not the clean crash of an accident, the ugly sound of something thrown. He crept to the staircase and sat in the dark. Below, his mother stood in the foyer wearing a silk robe, one hand over her mouth. His father stood by the door, buttoning his shirt, smelling like smoke and another woman's perfume. "You promised me?" his mother whispered. Carlo laughed without warmth. "Promises are for men with nothing to lose." His mother saw Roman on the stairs then. Her face changed. Shame moved over it, though she was not the one who should have carried shame. Carlo turned and followed her gaze. Roman expected anger. Instead, his father climbed the stairs, slowly stopped in front of him, and crouched. "A man who trusts too much," Carlo said. "Hands someone a knife and shows them where to cut." Roman remembered the smell of his father's cologne, the gold ring on his hand, the flat certainty in his voice. At 10 years old, Roman believed him. At 37, he had made Claire bleed from a wound Carlo left behind. The wind stung his eyes. He told himself it was only the cold. By afternoon, Marcus had more. Roman sat at the small desk in the inn while rain tapped against the window. The consulting group belongs to a man named Elliot Crane, Marcus said. He has done quiet work for Sorrento before. Reputation management, political pressure, digital cleanup. Nasty but polished. Can we prove Crane touched the photo? Soon. Soon is not proof. No, but I found the woman who edited it. Freelancer in Hoboken, paid through 3 accounts. She is scared, very scared. Of us. Of Sorrento. Roman looked toward the ocean. Get her safe before you ask questions. Marcus paused. That sounds like Claire talking. Roman did not respond. Maybe it was. Maybe the first real sign of love returning was when another person's voice began interrupting your worst instincts. Marcus continued. There is one more thing. Sorrento did not just send the photo. He had someone watching Claire for weeks. Roman's body went still. What did you say? There are images. Her outside the library. Her leaving doctor appointments. Her walking near your house. Roman's blood went cold, then hot. The old Roman rose with a violence so familiar it almost felt like relief. Send me names. Roman, send me the names. Marcus did not obey. Listen to me. If you come back to Brooklyn like this, you will start a war. Maybe Sorrento should have thought of that before he put eyes on my pregnant wife. Yes, Marcus said. He should have. But Claire asked you not to bring your world to her door. Roman went silent. The room seemed to shrink around him. Claire standing in the hospital hallway. Do not bring your men here. Do not have anyone watch me. Do not try to buy this town. Roman closed his eyes. His first instinct was protection. But protection in his hands had too often looked like possession. He breathed once. Then again. Get the names, he said. Give them to lawyers, investigators, people with badges if you have to. Marcus exhaled quietly. And Sorrento Roman opened his eyes. Not yet. After the call, Roman stood in the center of the room with nowhere to put his rage. In Brooklyn, rage had uses. It moved men. It opened doors. It settled debts. Here it had no place to go. So he walked. He walked through the town until his shoes were wet and his hands were numb. He passed the bakery, the pharmacy, a toy store with wooden blocks in the window, a church with a white steeple. At last he stopped in front of the Cape May Public Library. The building was small old brick with white columns and a blue sign swinging gently in the wind. Through the window he saw a children's corner, low shelves, a faded rug, a cardboard moon hanging from the ceiling. One chair had a cracked wooden arm. Several books were taped along the spines. Claire had loved places like this, not because they were grand, because they belonged to everyone. Roman went inside. A bell above the door chimed. The librarian looked up from the front desk. She was an older woman with silver hair and glasses on a chain. Good afternoon? Roman removed his gloves. Good afternoon. She waited. He glanced toward the children's corner. I want to make a donation. Her expression brightened with polite surprise. That is very kind. We have a general fund. Or, if you prefer, we can dedicate a bookplate in your name. No name. She blinked. I'm sorry. No plaque. No bookplate. No announcement. The librarian studied him more carefully now. That is unusual. I have been unusual in worse ways. She did not know what to do with that, so she said nothing. Roman looked around the room again. At the worn carpet, the old computers, the shelves that sagged slightly under picture books, the corner where children had probably sat for years opening worlds that cost nothing to enter. "What does this place need?" he asked. The librarian gave a small laugh. "How much time do you have?" Roman met her eyes. "As much as it takes." Something in his voice made her stop smiling. She pulled out a notepad. "Well," she said slowly, "the children's section needs new shelves. The after-school reading program lost funding. We need large print books, new computers, story hour supplies, and someone to fix the leak near the back window." Roman nodded. "Write all of it down. All of it. All of it." She began writing. Roman stood at the desk, hands folded in front of him, and felt strangely exposed. He had spent his life giving money like a signature fast and distant. This felt different, smaller, harder. No one here needed to fear him. No one needed to thank him. No one even needed to know. The librarian tore the sheet from the pad and handed it to him. "This is more than most people expect." Roman looked at the list. Children's books, shelving, reading lamps, roof repair, program funding. He thought of Noah's tiny hand opening in sleep. He thought of Claire whispering to him in the hospital. He thought of all the nights she had carried hope alone while he guarded an empire of shadows. "It is not enough," he said. The librarian did not understand. That was all right. Roman folded the list and placed it in his coat pocket. When he stepped back outside, the rain had stopped. The clouds were still low over the town, but a thin line of light had opened over the ocean. His phone buzzed. A message from Marcus. "The woman who edited the photo is willing to talk. Sorrento's name is close." Roman stared at the screen. For a moment he saw Vincent Sorrento's face, the polished smile, the expensive suit, the careful eyes of a man who liked watching other people fall. Then Roman looked back at the library. Inside, the silver-haired librarian had already returned to her desk. A little boy in a red coat sat on the faded rug, turning the pages of a picture book upside down. Roman put the phone away. He crossed the street to the hardware store and bought a toolbox, a ladder, and enough supplies to repair the leaking window before sunset. No one knew his name. No one applauded. No one owed him a thing. For the first time in his life, Roman DeLuca chose to fix something without standing close enough to be praised for the repair. The next morning, Roman returned to the library before the town had fully woken. The sky was still pale over Cape May, washed in gray and soft blue. Storefront windows reflected the first thin light. A delivery truck idled outside the bakery, and the smell of warm bread drifted down the quiet street. Roman stood on the sidewalk with a toolbox in one hand and a paper cup of black coffee in the other, looking at the library like a man facing a sentence he had chosen for himself. The old Roman would have sent a contractor, paid double, demanded silence, and called it done. This Roman found the key under the mat where the librarian said it would be, stepped inside alone, and began with the leaking window. The work was clumsy at first. His hands knew guns, ledgers, steering wheels, rings of power pressed across polished tables. They did not know old wood swollen with rain. Twice he scraped his knuckles. Once he cursed under his breath when a screw slipped and rolled beneath the radiator. By the time the librarian arrived, he was on a ladder sealing the frame while morning light spilled through the glass. She stopped just inside the door. "Well," she said, "I was not sure you would actually come." Roman looked down at her. "I said I would. In my experience, people say many things." He climbed down carefully and wiped his hands on a cloth. "So have I." The librarian studied him with the sharp patience of a woman who had spent her life watching people reveal themselves between sentences. "What was your name again?" Roman hesitated. "Roman. Just Roman. For now." She accepted that more easily than he expected. Then, Roman, the coffee machine is terrible, but it works. For the first time in days, something almost like a smile moved across his mouth. Thank you. He spent 3 hours fixing the window, tightening loose shelves, and measuring the children's corner for new bookcases. No one bowed. No one rushed. No one asked who he knew or what he controlled. A little girl in a purple coat came in with her grandmother and stared at him while he worked. "Are you a builder?" she asked. Roman paused with a screwdriver in his hand. "No. You look too serious to be a builder," her grandmother gasped softly. Roman looked at the child and answered with grave honesty. "That is probably true." The girl considered him, then pointed at the shelf. "It is crooked." Roman looked. It was. He fixed it. By noon, his back hurt. His shirt was dusty, and his phone had buzzed 14 times from Brooklyn. He answered none of them until he stepped outside. Marcus was the first call. "Are you alive?" Roman leaned against the brick wall beside the library entrance. "Yes." "You did not answer." "I was working." "On what a window?" Marcus said nothing. Roman looked across the street. A young mother pushed a stroller past the bakery. For half a second his heart moved before he realized it was not Claire. Marcus finally spoke. "I am trying to imagine you with a window. I was not good at it. That part I can imagine." Roman almost laughed. It came and went quickly. "What do you have?" The freelancer confirmed she altered the photograph. She says the instructions came through Crane. "We have payment records now. Sorrento is close enough to smell the smoke." Roman's hand tightened around the phone. Old heat rose in him. Familiar. Clean. The kind of anger that wanted a body attached to it. Across the street, the bakery door opened. A teenager carried out a tray of day-old bread and handed it to an elderly man in a worn coat. No one made a ceremony of it. They simply gave what was needed and continued the day. Roman exhaled. "Keep it legal." Marcus paused. "I am going to need you to say that again." "Keep it legal. That town is changing you faster than prison ever could have." Roman looked toward the road that led to Claire's cottage. "No," he said quietly. "She is." He ended the call before Marcus could answer. For the next 2 weeks, Roman built a life out of restraint. That was the hardest work, not the window, not the shelves, not the community center roof he paid to repair without leaving a name. Restraint. He did not drive down Claire's street unless he had a reason. He did not send men to guard her. He did not ask nurses, shopkeepers, or librarians what she was doing. He did not have anyone bring him photographs of Noah, though every part of him ached to see his son again. Instead, he sent short messages. "I am nearby if you need groceries." "No need to answer. I can drive you to the pediatrician if you want. No pressure. There is snow coming tonight. I left salt for the porch steps with Mrs. Whitaker next door. I will not come by unless you ask." Most messages stayed unread for hours. Some were never answered. Once, after 3 days of silence, Claire replied with 2 words. "Thank you." Roman sat on the edge of his narrow bed at the inn and stared at those 2 words until the screen went dark. In Brooklyn, men feared his silence. In Cape May, he feared Claire's. He learned the town slowly. At dawn, fishermen gathered near the diner and spoke in voices roughened by salt and years. At noon, the bakery sold out of cinnamon rolls. On Thursdays, the florist gave away bruised flowers to the nursing home. On rainy days, the library filled with children whose parents needed somewhere warm and safe to let them read. Roman began showing up there. Not every day. Never too much. He repaired a loose railing near the back steps. He carried boxes of donated books. He replaced the torn rug in the children's corner with one covered in blue waves and yellow stars. When the librarian asked if he wanted a receipt for tax purposes, he looked honestly confused. "No." "You are a strange man, Roman. I have been called worse." I am sure you have. She said it without fear. He found he liked that. One afternoon, nearly 3 weeks after Noah was born, Roman walked into the small pharmacy near Washington Street to buy bandages for his scraped knuckles. Rain tapped against the front windows. The place smelled like baby powder, cough syrup, and old linoleum. He saw Claire before she saw him. She stood at the checkout counter with Noah against one shoulder, a basket hooked awkwardly over her arm. The baby was crying with the fierce outrage of someone new to the world and already disappointed in it. Claire's hair was pinned badly at the back of her head. One strand clung to her cheek. Her eyes were shadowed with exhaustion. She shifted Noah, reached for her wallet, nearly dropped the basket, then caught it with her knee. Roman's whole body moved forward. Then he stopped. Claire looked up. For a second, surprise crossed her face, then caution. Roman lifted both hands, slightly empty. I can leave. Noah cried louder. Claire closed her eyes for one brief moment. When she opened them, pride and fatigue fought across her face. Roman spoke gently. Let me carry the basket. She looked at him. Only the basket, not the baby. He understood the difference so deeply it hurt. After a long pause, Claire held out the basket. Roman took it. The cashier scanned the items in silence, glancing between them with the delicate curiosity of a person pretending not to notice a story unfolding 2 feet away. Diapers, wipes, infant drops, tea, crackers, a small bottle of lavender shampoo. Claire paid. Roman carried the bag outside. Rain fell softly under a gray sky. Claire walked ahead of him toward her car. Noah tucked against her chest beneath the edge of her coat. Roman opened the trunk and placed the bag inside. Thank you, Claire said. Polite again, but not cold. Roman stepped back. You're welcome. She opened the rear door and bent to place Noah in the car seat. The baby fussed his tiny fists, waving in protest. Claire murmured to him, her voice low and tired. I know, baby. We're going home. Roman looked away because the tenderness was too intimate. Then Noah's crying faded to soft hiccups. Claire fastened the last strap and straightened. As she moved to close the door, Noah's hand slipped free from the blanket and reached toward the open air. Toward Roman. It lasted less than a second. A newborn reflex. Nothing more. Still, Roman froze. Claire froze too. Noah's little fingers opened and closed once as if grasping at a world that had not yet earned him. Roman did not touch him. He only looked. There were moments in a man's life that asked him who he was before he had time to choose an answer. Roman had failed that test once in a kitchen under warm afternoon light. This time, in a pharmacy parking lot under soft rain, he stayed still. Claire closed the car door gently. Her eyes did not meet his at first. When they finally did, something vulnerable flickered there. Not trust, not forgiveness. Something smaller and more frightening because it was alive. I need to get him home, she said. Roman nodded. Drive safe. She got into the car and left. Roman stood in the rain long after the taillights disappeared. That evening he went back to the library and assembled a bookshelf until his hands stopped shaking. The town noticed him before Claire wanted to. People talked because small towns were made of porches, bakery counters, waiting rooms, and the human need to understand anything unfamiliar. They talked about the tall man from New York who fixed the library window without leaving a name. They talked about the roof at the community center being repaired after months of committee meetings and no money. They talked about the new children's books arriving in boxes, bright covers stacked like small pieces of sunlight. They talked about him carrying groceries for Mrs. Alvarez when her arthritis flared. They talked about him standing in line at the diner, waiting like everyone else, looking absurdly serious, while deciding between blueberry pancakes and eggs. Claire heard all of it. She tried not to. At the pediatric clinic, a nurse said, "That Roman man helped my brother move a freezer yesterday. Wouldn't take a dime." Claire adjusted Noah's blanket. Did he... At the bakery? The woman behind the counter said. He buys day-old bread for the shelter twice a week. Claire reached for her tea. That's nice. At the library, Mrs. E. Whitaker leaned across the desk and whispered. He sat on the floor with 6 toddlers this morning and let them tell him how to build a puppet theater. Claire paused. A puppet theater, with terrible instructions. Claire almost smiled. She stopped herself too late. Mrs. Whitaker saw it and said nothing. That was worse. A week later, Claire came to the library with Noah sleeping in his stroller. She had promised Mrs. Whitaker she would help sort donated picture books for an hour while the baby slept. She did not know Roman would be there. He was sitting cross-legged on the new blue rug in the children's corner, surrounded by wooden boards, screws, and 3 small children who were offering opinions with great confidence. A boy with freckles pointed at the frame. It should go upside down. Roman looked at the half-built shelf. Why? Because then the books will be surprised. Roman considered that as if weighing an actual proposal. Interesting. A little girl shook her head. My mom says books do not like surprises. Roman nodded. That is also a strong point. Claire stood in the doorway, one hand on Noah's stroller, watching the most feared man in Brooklyn negotiate with preschoolers over furniture orientation. Roman looked up and saw her. The room changed. Not for the children. They continued arguing about the shelf, but Roman went still. Claire should have turned around. She should have left before the ache in her chest became something more complicated. Instead, she said, You're putting the bottom panel on backward. Roman looked down. He was. One of the children gasped. She knows. Claire walked over, crouched near the shelf, and turned the panel around. Roman watched her hands. No ring. Short nails. A faint scratch on one finger. He remembered holding those hands at City Hall when they married quietly because Claire had said she wanted vows more than spectacle. Thank you, he said. She stood. You're welcome. Noah stirred in the stroller. Roman's eyes moved to him immediately, then back to Claire, asking without words. Claire hesitated. Then she moved the stroller slightly closer. Roman did not step forward. He only leaned enough to see. Noah slept with one fist near his cheek, mouth, soft lashes, dark. Roman's face changed. Claire looked away before the sight could hurt her too much. Mrs. Whitaker appeared behind the desk and cleared her throat as if she had not been watching every second. Claire. Dear, the donation boxes are in the back. Claire nodded. I'll get started. As she passed Roman, he said quietly, He looks bigger. Claire stopped. He is. Good. The word came out rough. Claire glanced at him. He eats like he's preparing for war. A breath of laughter escaped Roman before he could catch it. That may be from my side. Claire's mouth softened. Unfortunately. For 1 second, they were almost themselves. Then Noah shifted and the moment folded away. Roman lowered his gaze and returned to the shelf. Claire went to the back room with her pulse beating harder than it should have. The first real conversation happened on a Thursday afternoon at the bakery. Claire sat by the window with Noah asleep in the stroller beside her. Rain streaked the glass, turning the street outside into a watercolor of gray pavement and yellow lamps. She had ordered tea and a slice of lemon cake she had not touched. She was tired in a way sleep did not fix. Motherhood had made her heart larger and her body less her own. Some mornings she woke with Noah against her chest and felt a love so fierce it frightened her. Other mornings she cried in the shower because she could not remember the last time someone had held her without needing anything from her. The bell above the bakery door chimed. Roman stepped in, shaking rain from his coat. He saw her at once. His first instinct was to leave. She saw that too. Before he could turn, Claire said, You can sit. Roman froze. Are you sure I said, sit, Roman? Not move back into my life? He nodded once. Fair. He crossed the room and sat across from her, careful not to crowd the small table. The bakery was warm around them, filled with cinnamon coffee and the soft clatter of cups. For a while, neither spoke. Claire wrapped both hands around her tea. People talk in small towns. Roman looked down. I have noticed. They talk about you. That was not the point. I know. He looked up. Claire met his eyes. That is why I listened. The words landed softly, but Roman felt them everywhere. He did not rush to fill the silence. He had learned that silence was not always an enemy. Sometimes it was the only honest space left between two wounded people. Claire looked toward Noah. You hurt me. Roman's expression tightened. I know. No, she said. You know you were wrong. That is not the same thing. He absorbed it. Claire's voice remained calm, but her fingers tightened around the cup. I packed his first clothes alone. I went to appointments alone. I sat in a room full of women holding their husbands' hands while a nurse told me his heartbeat was strong. Roman's throat worked. Claire continued. I wanted to hate you. It would have been easier. But every beautiful thing that happened hurt because you should have been there. Roman looked at the table. I should have been. Yes. There was no cruelty in her answer. That made it worse. I thought about calling you when labor started, Claire said. Roman's eyes lifted. I picked up the phone. The bakery noise seemed to fall away. Claire blinked quickly, refusing the tears gathering in her eyes. Then I remembered your face in the kitchen, the way you looked at me, like I had already been convicted. Roman did not move, so I called a taxi instead. His hands curled slowly under the table, not in anger, in pain. I am sorry, he said. Claire looked at him for a long moment. This time she did not reject the apology. She did not accept it either. It simply entered the space between them and stayed there. Noah made a small sound in his sleep. Claire reached down and adjusted his blanket. Roman watched, careful not to stare too openly, but unable to look away completely. You are different with him, Claire said. Roman's voice was low. I am trying to deserve being near him. And me. The question came before she seemed ready for it. Roman looked at her. The old answer would have been immediate, dramatic, possessive, full of promises. You are my wife. I will win you back. I will make this right. He gave none of those. With you, he said slowly, I am trying to become someone who would not hurt you the same way twice. Claire looked down at her tea. The answer made things harder. Arrogance would have been easier to refuse. A changed man was more dangerous to a heart trying to protect itself. She stood after a few minutes. I should get Noah home. Roman stood too, but did not reach for the stroller. Of course. They walked outside together. The rain had stopped, leaving the street shining under late afternoon light. The air smelled of salt and wet stone. At her car, Claire paused with her hand on the door. Roman expected a polite goodbye. Instead, she looked at Noah, then at him. There is a farmer's market on Saturday. Roman's heart changed rhythm. Okay. They have live music, food trucks, families. He kept his face still with effort. That sounds nice. Claire looked directly at him. You can come if you want. For a moment, Roman did not trust himself to speak. The invitation was small, fragile, wrapped in warning. But after everything, it felt like being handed a match in a cold room. I would like that, he said. Claire narrowed her eyes slightly. Do not make it bigger than it is. A real smile touched his mouth, brief and unguarded. I will try. She opened the car door, then stopped once more. And Roman, yes. No black SUVs. No men watching from corners. No acting like the town belongs to you. He nodded. Just me. Claire studied him, searching for the old command beneath the new softness. She did not find it. "Just you," she said. Then she got into the car and drove away. Roman stood on the sidewalk until she turned the corner. Inside the stroller, Noah's blue blanket had slipped slightly, and Roman could still see the small shape of his son through the rear window before the car disappeared. Saturday morning came clear and bright with sunlight breaking over Cape May and the first market stalls opening beneath the sound of gulls and distant music. Roman arrived before most of the crowd, hands empty coat. Simple, no guards behind him, carrying only the nervous heart of a man learning how to stand near what he loved without trying to own it. Roman saw Claire before she saw him. She came through the farmer's market crowd with Noah's stroller in front of her, moving beneath strings of white lights that swayed gently in the ocean wind. The morning sun touched her hair, turning the loose brown strands near her face almost gold. She wore a cream sweater under a long wool coat, simple jeans, and the tired softness of a woman who had slept in pieces and still chosen to show up to the world with grace. Noah was awake in the stroller, blinking at everything. The music, the bright tents, the children running past with paper cups of cider, the old man selling honey, the smell of fried dough and roasted coffee and salt moving in from the harbor. Roman stood beside a booth stacked with jars of peach jam and felt more nervous than he had before any meeting, any trial, any funeral. Claire noticed him near the edge of the crowd. He lifted one hand. Not too high, not too eager. She slowed, and for a second Roman saw the choice pass through her face. She could still turn around. She could still decide this had been a mistake. She could still protect the quiet life she had built by keeping him outside it. Then Noah made a soft sound and kicked both feet beneath his blanket. Claire looked down at him. When she looked back at Roman, she kept walking. "Good morning," she said. Roman stepped aside to give her room. "Good morning." Noah stared up at him with wide, dark eyes. Roman's chest tightened. "Good morning, little man." Claire glanced at him. Little man. Roman looked almost embarrassed. "I did not plan it. That makes it worse." A small smile touched her mouth before she could hide it. Roman saw it and looked away quickly as if staring too long might scare it off. They began walking through the market. Nothing dramatic happened. That was what made it feel dangerous. Claire stopped at a flower booth and picked up a bundle of white tulips. Roman stood beside the stroller, hands in his coat pockets, watching Noah watch the world. A woman bumped Roman's shoulder while reaching for apples, then apologized without recognizing him. Roman said, "It is all right." Claire heard the softness in his voice and looked over. In Brooklyn, people made space before Roman needed it. In Cape May, a woman in a knitted hat could bump into him over apples and walk away untouched by fear. Claire did not know why that mattered, but it did. At a bakery stall, she bought a small bag of powdered sugar cookies. Roman paid for his own coffee and did not try to pay for hers. That small restraint almost made her laugh. Once he would have handed over cash for the whole booth and thought generosity had done the work of tenderness. Noah fussed as they passed a stand selling handmade blankets. Claire stopped the stroller and bent down. "Hey, sweetheart. Too much noise?" Noah's small face scrunched with displeasure. Roman stood still, not reaching, not hovering, but present. Claire lifted the baby from the stroller. Noah settled against her shoulder at once, one tiny fist pressed near her collar. Roman watched them. He tried not to let his hunger show. Claire noticed anyway. "You can hold the blanket," she said. She took Noah's blue blanket from the stroller and handed it to Roman. "Not the baby. The blanket." Roman accepted it with both hands. "Thank you." Claire gave him a look. "It is a blanket, Roman." He looked down at the soft fabric. "I know." But they both knew it was not just a blanket. It was another inch, another breath. Another place she allowed him to stand without stepping away. They wandered toward the music near the harbor. A local band played under a green tent guitar and fiddle, and a woman with a clear voice singing about leaving home and coming back, changed. Families gathered on folding chairs. Children danced near the front with the pure lack of shame only children and saints seemed to have. Claire stood beside Roman Noah, resting against her chest. For a few minutes, they simply listened. Roman felt the strange ache of almost a husband, almost a father, almost forgiven. The word frightened him because it asked for patience, and patience had never been one of his virtues. He had built his life on immediate answers, immediate payment, immediate consequences. Claire and Noah had become the first things he could not force into place. A little boy ran past and nearly collided with Roman's leg. Roman reached down by instinct to steady him. The boy looked up. "You're tall." Roman blinked. "Yes." "Are you a giant?" Claire pressed her lips together. Roman looked at her, then back at the boy. Not officially. The child accepted that and ran away. Claire laughed. It was quiet, but it was real. Roman turned toward the sound before he could stop himself. Claire's smile faded slightly when she saw his face. Not because he had done anything wrong, because memory had entered too quickly. She looked back toward the band. Roman did the same. They stayed until Noah fell asleep. Then Claire placed him carefully into the stroller, tucking the blue blanket around him. Roman watched her fingers smooth the fabric. His fingers still remembered the night she had left. The ring on marble. The door closing. His own voice saying something unforgivable because he had been too proud to admit he was terrified. As the market thinned in the afternoon, they walked toward a bench facing the water. Fishing boats rocked in their slips. Sunlight moved across the harbor in broken silver. The lighthouse stood in the distance, white and steady against the blue sky. Claire sat first. Roman waited. She looked up at him. "You can sit." He sat on the far end of the bench, leaving space between them. Noah slept in the stroller beside Claire's knee. For a while, neither spoke. The silence was not easy, but it was no longer empty. It held the music behind them, the gulls overhead, the sound of stroller wheels passing on the boardwalk, the soft breathing of their son. Claire looked at the ocean. "When I first came here, I was angry every day." Roman turned slightly toward her, but did not interrupt. "I woke up angry. I went to sleep angry. I folded baby clothes angry. I made doctor appointments angry. I hated you so much some mornings I thought it might keep me standing." Roman's jaw tightened, but he stayed quiet. Claire's hands rested in her lap. "Then I got tired." She smiled faintly without humor. "Anger takes more energy than people think." Roman looked down at his hands. "I know what regret feels like." Claire glanced at him. "Do you—" He thought about giving the easy answer. Instead, he told the truth. "Not the way you know anger." That answer made her look at him longer. Roman continued, voice low. "I know shame. I know what it feels like to remember my own voice and wish I could cut it out of the past. I know what it feels like to stand outside a hospital room and understand I was not missing because of fate or danger or work. I was missing because I chose not to listen." Claire's eyes moved back to the water. The wind lifted the edge of her hair. Roman reached inside his coat and removed a folded document. He held it for a moment before offering it to her. Claire looked at the paper, then at him. "What is that?" "Something I signed yesterday." She took it carefully and unfolded it. Her brow tightened as she read. Roman watched her face. Confusion first, then surprise, then something close to alarm. "Roman." He waited. "This transfers voting control of 3 DeLuca companies into an independent trust." "Yes." She looked up. "With oversight." "Yes." "And legal review." "Yes." Her eyes narrowed. Why are you showing me this? Roman leaned back against the bench and looked at the harbor. Because I spent most of my life believing control was safety. Claire said nothing. My father taught me that if a man held enough power, no one could betray him. No one could leave him. No one could make him small. His mouth tightened. I believed him for longer than I want to admit. Claire folded the document slowly but did not hand it back. Roman continued. When that photo came, I did not ask myself if it was true. I asked myself if I was about to become my mother. Claire's face softened, then guarded again. He deserved both. So I became my father instead. The words sat between them. Claire looked away first. Roman's voice stayed quiet. I am not giving up control because I think a legal document fixes what I did. It does not. I am showing you because promises are too easy for men like me. I can promise anything and make it sound holy. He looked at her then. I want there to be proof that I know my old life cannot stay untouched if I am asking to be near you and Noah. Claire looked at the document in her lap. A paper does not make you safe. No, money does not make you safe. I know. Power definitely does not make you safe. For a second, a sad smile touched his mouth. I am beginning to understand that. Claire studied him carefully. The old Roman would have defended himself. He would have explained, persuaded, turned the moment until he stood in better light. This Roman sat under the afternoon sun with his hands open and his pride on the ground between them. That frightened her more than his arrogance ever had. Because arrogance made leaving simple. Change made everything complicated. She handed the paper back. I am still hurt. Roman accepted it. I know. Some days I remember your face in that kitchen and I feel sick. His eyes closed for half a second. I know. No, Roman. Do not say that like it is something you can understand because you feel guilty. He opened his eyes. Claire's voice trembled now, but she did not look away. You do not know what it did to me to have the person I trusted most look at me like I disgusted him. Roman's face changed. There were wounds a man could survive because they came from outside. Knives, bullets, broken bones. Then there were wounds made by truth. Those did not bleed where anyone could see. I do not know, he said. Claire's breath caught. He looked at her. But I want to listen until I stop pretending that my regret is the same as your pain. The wind moved around them. Noah stirred in the stroller, making a small, sleepy noise. Claire reached down and touched his blanket. Roman watched her hand, the gentleness of it, the steadiness. Claire spoke without looking at him. I am not coming back to Brooklyn. Roman felt the words strike, but he did not let them move him. Okay. She looked at him sharply. That is it. Yes, you are not going to tell me Noah belongs with the DeLucas, no. You are not going to say your son needs your name, your house, your protection. Roman's eyes moved to Noah, then back to Claire. My son needs peace more than he needs my name on a gate. Claire stared at him. And what do you need? The question came softly, but it went straight through him. Roman looked out at the water. I need to learn how to love without making it another word for possession. Claire looked down quickly. Her eyes shone. She hated that answer. Not because it was wrong, because some part of her had needed it months ago, and hearing it now made the loss feel fresh all over again. Roman did not reach for her. He did not ask what she was thinking. He let the moment live without trying to own it. Later, he walked her to the car. Claire placed Noah into the car seat while Roman stood near the trunk with his hands in his pockets. A family passed behind them laughing. Somewhere nearby, a vendor packed empty crates into a truck. Claire closed the rear door. Thank you for today, she said. Roman nodded. Thank you for letting me come. She opened the driver's door, then paused. Noah has a pediatric appointment Wednesday. Roman looked at her. I remember. Of course he remembered. He had written it down after she mentioned it once in the bakery, then memorized the time like a prayer. Claire looked at him through the open car door. If you want to drive us, you can. Roman felt the world narrow to her face, her voice that one careful offer. I would like that. No men. None. No black car. He glanced toward the old blue sedan he had rented for the week. I have been humbled by my transportation already. Claire's mouth twitched. Good. She got in and drove away. Roman remained in the parking lot until her car disappeared, then walked back toward the market with his hands still trembling inside his pockets. That evening, Marcus called. Roman was in the small kitchen of his rented cottage, washing a mug he had used for coffee. The cottage was a step up from the inn, but not by much. White walls, old wooden floors, a couch that sank too far in the middle, windows facing the water. Claire had not been inside. Roman had rented it because the inn was full for the holidays, and because part of him needed a place that did not feel temporary. He answered with the phone between his shoulder and ear. Yes. Marcus did not waste words. We have Sorrento. Roman turned off the faucet. How strong enough? The freelancer signed a statement. Crane's payment records connect to Sorrento's nephew. 2 of the men who followed Claire have been identified. 1 is ready to talk if we guarantee protection. Roman stood motionless. Water dripped from the mug into the sink. Marcus continued, Say the word and I can bring it to the district attorney. Or I can bring it to men who handle things more permanently. There it was. The old road, clear, familiar, waiting. Roman could see it. Sorrento dragged from his restaurant office, Crane begging in some warehouse off the river, the nephew vanishing for a few days and returning with a limp and a new respect for boundaries. For a moment, Roman wanted it so badly his teeth hurt. He wanted Sorrento afraid. He wanted him ruined. He wanted him to feel even one breath of the helplessness Claire had felt standing in that kitchen while Roman destroyed her with a lie another man had placed in his hand. Marcus said nothing. He knew better than to interrupt that kind of silence. Roman looked across the cottage. On the small table near the window sat a children's book he had bought that morning and had not yet gathered the courage to give Noah. The cover showed a little boat under a moon. Claire had once wanted moons and stars for the nursery. Roman closed his eyes. Claire's voice came back. Do not bring your world here. His son needs peace more than he needs my name on a gate. When Roman opened his eyes, the old road was still there. He chose not to take it. Give everything to the lawyers, he said. Marcus exhaled slowly. And the other option? There is no other option. Roman. No street war. Marcus was silent for a long moment. That is not how your father would have handled this. Roman dried the mug and set it on the counter. My father is dead. The words were quiet. They were also final. Marcus's voice softened. I will send it through legal channels. Keep the witness safe. I will. And Marcus. Yes, make sure Claire's name stays out of the press. I already planned for that. Roman looked toward the dark water outside. Thank you. Marcus gave a low laugh. You keep saying that lately. It is unsettling. Roman almost smiled. Get used to it. He ended the call. For several minutes he stood alone in the kitchen, listening to the wind press against the windows. He had not forgiven Sorrento. He was not sure he ever would. But he had made a choice without blood in it, and the room felt different afterward. Not peaceful. Cleaner. Wednesday morning, Roman picked up Claire and Noah for the pediatric appointment. He arrived in the rented sedan exactly 5 minutes early and parked across the street instead of in front of the cottage. Claire noticed. He knew because she paused on the porch with Noah's carrier in one hand and a diaper bag over her shoulder, looking at the space he had left. She walked down the path. Roman stepped out. Good morning. Good morning. He reached for the diaper bag. Claire hesitated, then handed it to him. Not the carrier. The bag. Again, he accepted the inch he was given. At the clinic, Roman sat beside Claire in the waiting room while Noah slept in the carrier between them. The room was full of pastel walls, fish stickers, tired parents, and children who either cried or tried to lick furniture. A little girl with pigtails stared at Roman from across the room. He stared back without meaning to. Claire leaned toward him. "You are scaring her." Roman blinked and softened his face. The little girl kept staring. Claire whispered, "Not that much." Roman adjusted his expression again. Claire's mouth curved. He looked at her. "What you look like you are negotiating peace with your own face." "I might be losing." She laughed under her breath. The sound did something to him that no victory ever had. When the nurse called Noah's name, Claire lifted the carrier. Roman followed one step behind. Inside the exam room, the pediatrician weighed Noah, measured him, checked his breathing and reflexes. Roman stood near the wall, silent, watching every movement with the focus of a man guarding a crown. "He is growing beautifully," the doctor said. Claire smiled. Roman looked at Noah and felt those words enter him like sunlight. Growing beautifully. The doctor glanced at Roman. "Dad, would you like to help hold him while I listen to his heartbeat?" The room went still. Claire's face changed. Roman did not move. The doctor, sensing the tension too late, looked between them. Claire's hand tightened around Noah's blanket. Roman looked at her, not the doctor. Only Claire. "If that is all right," he said. Claire stared at him. There was fear in her eyes, not of him hurting Noah with his hands, of him stepping too quickly into a place where trust had not caught up yet. Roman lowered his voice. "It is all right if it is not." The pediatrician busied herself with the chart, pretending not to hear. Noah made a soft, impatient sound. Claire looked at her son, then at Roman. After a long moment, she lifted Noah carefully and placed him in Roman's arms. The world stopped. Roman forgot how to breathe. Noah was warm, impossibly light, his head resting in the crook of Roman's elbow. His tiny body shifted against Roman's chest, alive and fragile and trusting because babies did not know yet what adults had ruined. Roman held him like he was made of glass and fire. Claire watched every second. "Support his head," she said. Roman adjusted immediately. "Like this. A little higher." He obeyed. The doctor listened to Noah's heartbeat. Roman looked down at his son. Noah opened his eyes. For one brief second, father and son looked at each other. Roman's vision blurred. He blinked hard. The doctor smiled. Strong heartbeat. Claire's breath caught softly. Roman looked at her. He did not say anything. Neither did she. But when the exam ended, Claire let him carry Noah back to the car. Only that far. It was enough. Winter came slowly to Cape May. The tourist streets grew quiet. Christmas lights appeared in shop windows. Frost silvered the boardwalk in the mornings. The harbor smelled colder, sharper. The ocean turned dark blue beneath heavy skies. Roman stayed. He returned to Brooklyn when business demanded his face, but never longer than necessary. He kept lawyers between him and the old violence. He let Marcus handle the families, the docs, the men who muttered that Roman was going soft. Maybe he was. Or maybe he had spent too many years mistaking hardness for strength. In Cape May, Claire allowed him small pieces of Noah's life. A walk on Sunday afternoon. A ride to the clinic. An hour at the library while she sorted donated books. Then 2 hours. Then, one evening, when a storm rolled in and Claire had a fever, she opened the cottage door with Noah crying in her arms and said, "I need help." Roman had never heard a greater act of trust. He stepped inside without looking around too much, though every part of him noticed everything. The small living room, the folded baby clothes on the couch, The mug of cold tea on the table, the stack of library books near the fireplace, the absence of anything from Brooklyn. Claire handed him Noah. Not a blanket, not a bag. Noah. Roman took him carefully. Claire closed her eyes in relief for half a second. "I just need to shower," she said. "Take your time." She looked at him exhausted but still guarded. "Do not say that unless you mean it." "I mean it." She disappeared down the hallway. Noah cried against Roman's shoulder, furious and red-faced. Roman stood in the center of the room, suddenly more terrified than he had been facing armed men. "All right," he whispered. "I know. I am not your first choice." Noah screamed harder. That was fair. Roman walked slowly to the window. Rain struck the glass in silver lines. He shifted Noah the way he had seen Claire do, one hand supporting his head, one arm secure around his body. He began to rock. Noah did not stop at first. Roman kept rocking. He hummed because he did not know any lullabies. The sound came out low and rough, barely music at all, something his mother used to hum in the kitchen when she thought no one was listening. Noah's cries softened. Roman froze, then kept moving carefully. "That is it," he whispered. "You are safe." The words left him before he could think. He said them again. "You are safe." By the time Claire returned in clean clothes, hair damp around her face, Noah was asleep against Roman's chest. Roman stood near the window, afraid to move. Claire stopped in the doorway. For a long moment she only watched. Roman turned his head slightly. "How long have you been standing there? Long enough? I can put him down." Claire shook her head. "Not yet." The fire crackled softly in the hearth. Rain tapped the roof. Noah slept between them like the smallest possible bridge. Claire walked to the couch and sat slowly exhausted. Roman remained standing. "You should sit," she said. "If I move, he may wake. He will wake eventually." "That sounds like a threat. It is parenthood." Roman looked down at Noah. Claire saw the awe on his face, and something inside her ached with a gentleness she had not invited. "Sit down, Roman." He sat carefully on the far end of the couch. Noah stayed asleep. Claire leaned back, eyes half closed. For several minutes the room held only rain fire and the breathing of their son. Then Claire spoke quietly. "I used to imagine this." Roman looked at her. "This room, no." Her eyes stayed on Noah. "You holding him?" Roman could not answer. "I imagined it before everything happened. In Brooklyn, in the nursery we never finished." His voice was rough. "I remember the moons and stars." Claire looked at him surprised. "You do." "I remember more than I acted like I did." That hurt them both. Claire looked back at the fire. "I wanted him to know you." Roman's eyes burned. "I want to know him." She nodded slowly. "You are starting to." He looked down at Noah. The baby's small hand rested against his sweater. Roman did not move for almost an hour. Later that night, after Noah was settled in the crib and Claire's fever had eased, Roman stood by the door to leave. Claire followed him into the small entryway. "Thank you," she said. He looked at her. "For trusting me enough to ask." Her face softened. "I did not say I trusted you." "No," he said, "but you let me help." Claire lowered her eyes. That was not easy. "I know." She looked up sharply. Roman corrected himself. "I am learning." That answer stayed between them. Claire opened the door. Cold night air entered the cottage. Roman stepped onto the porch. Before he left, Claire said his name. He turned. She stood in the doorway, one hand on the frame, the warm light behind her. "You can come by tomorrow afternoon if you want. Noah is usually awake around 3. Roman nodded too carefully. "I will be here. Do not bring anything expensive." A faint smile moved over his mouth. I will bring myself and a board book. Make sure the book is age appropriate. I will ask Mrs. Whitaker. Good. The door closed gently. Roman stood on the porch under the winter night, the ocean murmuring beyond the houses, and breathed like a man who had been underwater for months. The next afternoon, he arrived with a small picture book about a boat under the moon. Claire opened the door and looked at the cover. Moons and stars, she said. Roman's gaze held hers. Yes. She let him in. Snow began falling before sunset, soft and slow, covering the porch rail, the street, the roofs of parked cars. Inside the cottage smelled of tea and clean laundry. Noah lay on a blanket on the floor, kicking his legs with great seriousness. Roman sat beside him and opened the book. His first attempt at reading was terrible. He read like a man delivering a court statement. Claire sat in the armchair, watching over the rim of her mug. You are allowed to use emotion. Roman looked up. I am using emotion. You sound like you are sentencing the boat. He looked down at Noah. Noah stared back, fascinated. He does not seem to mind. He is a baby. His standards are low. Roman tried again. This time he gave the little boat a voice. It was deep, dramatic, and completely wrong. Claire laughed. Not a small breath. Not something she tried to hide. A real laugh. Roman looked up. The sound lit the room in a way the fire could not. Claire realized what had happened and looked down at her tea, but the smile remained. Noah kicked both feet. Roman returned to the book, softer now. Outside, snow gathered against the windows. Inside, their son listened to his father's awful boat voice, as if it were the finest music in the world. Claire watched them from the chair, one hand wrapped around her mug, the other resting near the old library card she kept on the side table. The past did not vanish. It sat with them, but for the first time it did not take every seat in the room. When Roman left that night, Claire did not close the door right away. She stood there while he walked down the path through fresh snow. Roman. He turned near the gate. She held the book in one hand. You forgot this? He looked at it, then at her. Keep it here, he said. Claire understood what he was asking without words. Not for forgiveness, not for a promise, only for a reason to return. She looked down at the book, then back at him. All right. Roman nodded once. The snow fell between them, quiet and bright beneath the porch light. By the time spring touched the shoreline, the little boat book had a permanent place on Claire's living room shelf, and Roman DeLuca had learned to knock before entering every room that mattered. He knocked on the cottage door every Saturday at 3. Not 2:55. Not 3:01. 3. At first, Claire opened the door with Noah already in her arms, her body angled in that quiet, protective way Roman had come to recognize. Later, she opened it while Noah played on the rug behind her. Later still, she called from the kitchen. It's open, and Roman stood on the porch for one extra second because he understood the weight of those two words. The cottage changed slowly around them. A second mug appeared in the cabinet, plain white, not expensive, not chosen by Roman. Claire found it at the general store and left it beside hers without comment. A folded blanket Roman used when Noah fell asleep against him stayed on the back of the couch. The little boat book gathered soft bends at the corners from too many readings in too many terrible voices. Noah grew louder. He learned to roll over with the fierce determination of a prize fighter. He discovered his own feet and treated them like suspicious strangers. He laughed for the first time one afternoon when Roman sneezed, and Roman sat frozen on the floor while Claire laughed at him from the armchair. You look terrified, she said. Roman stared down at Noah, who was still smiling with his whole small face. I was not prepared. For a laugh, for that laugh. Claire's smile softened before she looked away. Moments like that became the shape of their days. Not grand, not easy, not clean. Some afternoons Claire still went quiet. Roman could feel the past enter the room before she spoke. A certain angle of light in the kitchen, a sharp tone from a man on the street, a photograph in a magazine that showed a couple standing outside a hotel. Her hand would tighten around whatever she was holding, and Roman learned not to crowd her with apology. He would set down his cup. He would wait. Sometimes she said nothing. Sometimes she said, "I remembered it again." And Roman would answer, "I'm here." Not "I am sorry," though he was. Not "please forgive me," though part of him always wanted to ask. Just, "I'm here." One evening in April, Claire found an old box in the hall closet while looking for a spare blanket. Inside were a few things she had taken from Brooklyn in those frantic hours after she left. A sweater, a book of poems, a silver picture frame wrapped in tissue. Roman was on the floor with Noah stacking soft blocks, while Noah knocked them down with the delighted cruelty of a tiny king. Claire sat back on her heels and unwrapped the frame. The photo inside was from their wedding. No church, no crowd, no violin music. Just the two of them outside City Hall on a cold morning. Claire in a cream coat, Roman in a dark suit, her hand tucked into his, both of them laughing at something the photographer had said. Roman looked up when the room went quiet. Claire held the frame in both hands. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Noah slapped one block against another and broke the silence with a happy yell. Claire blinked. Her eyes were wet, but she did not cry. "I forgot I packed this," she said. Roman set the blocks aside. "I remember that morning." She gave a small laugh that hurt at the edges. "You were late. 4 minutes. You said traffic. It was traffic. You were nervous." Roman looked down. "Yes." Claire traced the edge of the frame with her thumb. "I thought that was sweet then." He said nothing. She placed the frame on the mantel beside a small vase of tulips and did not look at him after. But she did not put it back in the box. A week later, Marcus came to Cape May. He arrived in a charcoal coat and polished shoes that looked wrong against the sandy sidewalk. Roman met him outside the diner near the harbor. Inside, men drank coffee from chipped mugs and a waitress called everyone honey without asking permission. Marcus looked through the window. "You live like this now." Roman followed his gaze. "Sometimes." Marcus lifted an eyebrow. "I saw a man in there put ketchup on eggs." "There are worse crimes." "Not many." Roman almost smiled. They walked toward the pier, the morning wind moving cold off the water. Marcus handed Roman a slim folder. Sorrento signed the agreement. Roman did not open it. Marcus continued. Crane gave a statement. "The freelancer is protected. The men who followed Claire have been charged through channels that do not touch her name. Sorrento loses influence over 2 unions and 3 port contracts. He also admits the evidence was manufactured through his people." Roman looked at the folder. Once this would have brought satisfaction. He would have wanted a room, a chair. Vincent Sorrento's fear. He would have wanted the man to understand exactly what his lie had cost. Now he only felt tired. "Does Claire's name appear anywhere?" "No." "Good." Marcus studied him. "That is all you want to know?" Roman looked toward the lighthouse. "It is the only part that matters." Marcus stood beside him for a moment, hands in his coat pockets. "She changed you." Roman's eyes stayed on the water. "No. She showed me what I was." Marcus nodded slowly. "And the boy?" At that, Roman's face changed. Marcus noticed. Roman cleared his throat. "He laughs when I sneeze." A rare smile tugged at Marcus's mouth. "That must be humbling. You have no idea." Marcus looked at his old friend for a long second. The Roman he had known in Brooklyn had always seemed carved from dark stone. This man looked worn down in places, but warmer for it. Less untouchable. More alive. Marcus handed him the folder again. "Keep it anyway." Roman took it. That evening, he brought the folder to Claire. She was sitting at the kitchen table with Noah asleep upstairs, a cup of tea cooling near her hand. Rain tapped gently against the window. The cottage smelled like lemon soap and the soup she had made for dinner. Roman placed the folder on the table. Claire looked at it. "What is that Sorrento?" Her face went still. Roman sat across from her, leaving the folder closed. "It is handled legally. Your name is protected. Noah's name is protected. No one from that world comes near this house." Claire kept her eyes on the folder. For months, the name Sorrento had lived between them like a shadow without a body. The man who built the lie. The man who sent the photo. The man who lit the fuse and waited for Roman to destroy his own home. Claire reached for the folder, then stopped. "I thought I would want to read it." Roman waited. She pulled her hand back. "I do not." He nodded. They sat in silence. Finally, Claire said, "I wanted him to be the reason." Roman looked at her. "For a while, I wanted it to be simple. A bad man lied, you believed him, and that was the whole story." Roman's fingers rested lightly on the table, but it was not. "No." Claire's voice was soft. "He did something cruel, but he did not make you look at me that way." Roman closed his eyes for one breath. "No, he did not." The rain continued against the glass. Claire looked toward the hallway where the stairs led up to Noah's room. "I do not want revenge near my son." Roman opened his eyes. "He will not have it." She looked back at him. "And I do not want fear running this family." Roman heard the word family and did not move, though it struck him like light. Claire seemed to hear it too. Her cheeks colored faintly, but she did not take it back. Roman said, "Neither do I." She pushed the folder back toward him. "Then take that out of my kitchen." Roman picked it up. He fed the papers into the fireplace, one sheet at a time, while Claire watched from the table. The flames caught, curled the edges, blackened the signatures, and turned the last remains of Vincent Sorrento's lie into ash. Noah cried once upstairs, then settled. Claire exhaled. Roman stayed near the fireplace until the folder was gone. Summer came with tourists, bright umbrellas, music from outdoor cafes, and Noah's first tooth. He became a child of the town before he had words for it. The bakery owner kept a small jar of soft biscuits behind the counter for him. Mrs. Whitaker at the library claimed he had excellent taste in picture books, though he mostly chewed the corners. The fishermen at the pier tipped their caps when Claire pushed his stroller past. Roman became part of the town more slowly. People stopped whispering when he entered the diner. The florist trusted him to carry heavy buckets without breaking stems. Children at the library asked him to read the boat book, then complained because he always gave the moon a voice too serious for a moon. One afternoon, Claire arrived at the library and stopped just inside the door. Roman sat on the blue rug with Noah in his lap, surrounded by children. A little girl held up a book about a dragon. "Can you do the dragon voice?" Roman looked deeply uncomfortable. Mrs. Whitaker stood behind the desk, enjoying herself far too much. Roman opened the book. The dragon voice was terrible. The children loved it. Claire leaned against the doorframe, watching Noah press one hand against Roman's sleeve, as if he had always known it belonged there. Roman looked up and saw her. For once he did not look ashamed to be caught wanting this life. He only smiled. Claire felt something inside her answer, not all at once, not like a door thrown open, more like a window unlatched after a long winter. The Family Literacy Festival arrived in late August. The library lawn filled with tents, folding tables, balloons, donated books, paper crowns, face paint, lemonade, and the kind of noise that made babies stare and old people smile. Claire moved from table to table with a clipboard, her hair pinned back. Her sleeves rolled her face, focused and bright. Roman carried Noah on his shoulders. Noah gripped his father's hair with both hands and shouted at birds, clouds, flags, and anyone who made the mistake of waving at him. Book Noah announced when they passed a table of picture books. "Yes," Roman said solemnly. "A very strong observation. Dog. That is a dog. Dad." Roman stopped walking. The world did not. Children ran past. A volunteer laughed near the lemonade table. A balloon popped somewhere behind him. Music played from a speaker near the steps. But Roman stood completely still. Claire turned from the sign and table. She had heard it. Noah slapped one little hand against Roman's head. "Dad." Roman's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Claire walked toward them slowly. Her eyes shone. Roman looked at her as if asking whether he had imagined it. She smiled through the tears she did not wipe away. He said it. Noah bounced happily, unaware that he had just placed a crown on a man who no longer wanted one. Roman reached up and covered the child's small hand with his own. "Yeah," he whispered. "He did?" Later, after the festival quieted and the last boxes of books were carried back inside, Claire found Roman sitting alone on the harbor bench. The same bench where they had sat after the farmer's market. The same bench where he had shown her the legal papers. The same bench where silence had first begun to feel less like an ending. The sunset spread gold across the water. Claire sat beside him. For a while they listened to the tide move against the pilings. Noah slept in his stroller beside them, worn out from being adored by half the town. Roman looked toward the horizon. "I did not think he would call me that." Claire watched the water. "I did." He turned to her. "You did?" She nodded. "He knows who shows up." Roman looked down at his hands. The words entered him slowly. Claire reached into her bag and took out the old library card that had belonged to her mother. The corners were soft from years of being carried. The ink had faded. Roman had seen it many times, but always from a distance, as if it belonged to a part of Claire's heart he had no right to touch. She held it for a moment. "My mother told me once that home is not where nothing bad ever happens." Roman looked at her. Claire's thumb moved over the worn card. She said home is where people tell the truth about what happened and still make room for mourning. Roman stayed silent. Claire stepped in front of him and slipped the card into the inside pocket of his jacket. His breath caught. "Claire." "I am not giving it away," she said. He understood before she finished. "I am sharing it." Roman closed his eyes. For a second, he was back in the hospital doorway, seeing Noah for the first time. Back in the kitchen, hearing the ring touch marble. Back in the rain, standing outside the pharmacy while his son's tiny hand reached toward him. Then he was here, on a bench by the harbor with Claire close enough to touch and Noah sleeping beside them. He opened his eyes. "I will take care of it." Claire shook her head. "Do not take care of it like something you own." She placed her hand over his chest, directly above the pocket. "Carry it like something you have been trusted with." Roman covered her hand with his. "I can do that." She looked at him for a long moment. Then she leaned down and kissed him. It was not the kind of kiss that erased pain. It did not make the past disappear or turn betrayal into something smaller. It was careful, trembling, alive. Roman did not pull her closer. He let her choose the distance. He let her decide when it began and when it ended. When she drew back, his eyes were wet. Claire smiled softly. "You are allowed to breathe." He let out a broken breath. She sat beside him again, and this time when her hand rested on the bench between them, Roman took it. She let him. 1 year later, the cottage had changed. There were more books, more toys, more shoes by the door. Roman's coat hung beside Claire's. The white mug in the cabinet had a chip near the rim from the morning Noah tried to help unload the dishwasher. The wedding photo stood on the mantel, no longer alone. Beside it was a picture from the library festival Roman with Noah on his shoulders. Claire laughing just outside the frame. They visited Brooklyn sometimes, not the old house. Roman had sold it. He took Claire and Noah to a quiet apartment overlooking the park when business required him in the city, but Cape May remained home. The DeLuca name changed too. Quietly at first, then in ways no one could ignore. Legal boards, clean contracts, men who did not like the new rules left. Men who did stayed because Marcus made it clear that Roman's mercy had grown, but his memory had not weakened. On an autumn evening, almost 3 years after Noah's birth, the three of them walked along the shoreline as the sun lowered itself into the Atlantic. Noah ran ahead with a plastic bucket collecting shells with the solemn urgency of a treasure hunter. "Mom, look." Claire crouched as he held up a broken shell. "It is beautiful. It is cracked." Roman stepped beside them. Sometimes cracked things are still worth keeping. Claire looked up at him. Noah dropped the shell into his bucket and ran toward the pier before the moment could become too heavy. They followed him to the old bench near the lighthouse view. The beacon flashed in the distance, steady against the deepening blue. Noah climbed onto the bench between them and pointed. "It keeps blinking." Claire smiled. "It does." Even when it is dark, Roman looked at Claire, then at his son, especially then. Noah accepted this as enough and leaned against Roman's side, tired from running. Claire rested her head briefly against Roman's shoulder. The wind moved around them. The water breathed against the rocks. Behind them, Cape May glowed with porch lights and dinner sounds and the low murmur of ordinary lives being lived. Roman reached into his jacket pocket. The library card was still there. He carried it everywhere now, not as proof that he had been forgiven, as a reminder of the hand that had trusted him again. Claire noticed and slipped her fingers through his. Noah yawned. The lighthouse flashed once more across the bay, and Roman sat between the woman he had nearly lost and the son who had taught him how gently a man could be remade.